what's up, folks? Welcome back to another edition of the Rodcast. We like to call it the Freak Flag, Feel Good, Fake It Till You Make It, Ric Flair, Woo! Football Friday edition of the Rodcast. I'm not going to be able to do that woo forever because we do have a newborn coming at one point. So my woo got to be like a golf woo. Be like, woo! Which doesn't, they don't have the same flavor to it. So either way, appreciate you guys joining us. We'll get into a lot of Texas football. As a matter of fact, we will have my man Geoff Ketchum, man of many talents, Renaissance man, but also an aficionado when it comes to the recruiting world. He is going to join us, and we're going to talk about the Colin Simmons recruitment just a little bit more and dive deep into it. Yes, it's just sports. So hey, we get into the Ric Flair woo. Trust me, it will rejuvenate your soul, revitalize your spirit. Just gotta woo. I'm telling you, it works. I wouldn't steer you wrong. It does work. Try it out. All right, so we'll get into Colin Simmons recruitment. We'll talk about it here a little bit, but then we'll get deep into it with my man Geoff Ketchum coming up next segment. We also are going to talk Texas football. I've been listening to the media availabilities for all the players. Quinn Ewers talked to the media yesterday, and there are a couple of things that he said that I'm not gonna lie, they left me titillated. All right, I'm excited. He got me excited. I know it's just talk right now, and we're getting ready to get to the football season where, hey, it's all about action. We about that action, boss. We'll get into that, but he said some things that I thought really showed his, or at least the transformation that he's undergone, right? Off season, whether it be physical or whether it's the mental, whether for him it's maybe emotional. They've talked about the transformation. JT Sanders has talked about it. A lot of the players have mentioned it. He said some things that really confirmed that transformation for me from a football perspective. So we'll talk about that. He also talked about the deep ball. We'll get into the deep ball because the deep ball ain't going nowhere. It is a vital part of Sark's offense. How do they make it more efficient? Because they were one of the worst deep ball teams in the Big 12 and in the country last year. As a matter of fact, I think they were 8th in the Big 12 in deep ball completion rate, 20 yards or more. So we'll get into that because actually Quinn Ewers talked about how he has improved his mentality when it comes to executing the deep ball. So we'll get into that. And Jalen Ford, also, he had some things to say that I believe actually – I don't know. It implies that maybe he won't statistically have a better year than last year because it's hard to do it, upstage what he did last season. It was a pretty phenomenal year. Should have won Defensive Player of the Year in the Big 12, but he could end up being a better football player in 2023. At least he should be, based on something he said and something that really reminded me of my time on the 40 acres too. Kind of reminded me of what helped my football IQ and football acumen. So we'll get to that too coming up and dive into it. Let's start with the Colin Simmons commitment. A lot of people are excited about it, as well they should be. I heard him talking about why he committed to Texas. One of the things that really helped him make up his mind and really, it turned him into a Texas guy, Texas commit now. Hopefully it ends up being a Texas signee. I know there's still time, but right now he seems to be all about the Longhorns. And based on his enthusiasm about the program right now, he talked about the family. He said, that Sark treated him and his family like basically unlike any other program, made them feel special. He also talked about, hey, what's up, Alan? He also talked about how, Sark basically treated him and his family in a way that was really hard for him to put into words. And essentially saying family is what matters a lot to him. He loved that family atmosphere that Sark right now is promoting and that he's building within the culture of his program. And I'll say this, Mack Brown was big on that. All right. I tell people all the time, shout out Anthony. I didn't commit to Mack Brown. I didn't. Actually, I didn't. The first person I committed to was not Mack Brown. First person I committed to was Sally Brown. I committed to Sally first. I was on the phone with Sally when I committed to Texas. That's how much of a family affair it was. All right? That's how much of a family affair it was. I was on the phone with the matriarch, and then she handed the phone to Mack and was like, I closed the deal for you, it's done. I was actually telling her about my girlfriend at the time and how, we was going to be together and that kind of stuff. And yeah, that we know that wasn't happening. And she kind of told me that too. And so did Mack. Mack was like, yeah, don't worry about that. When you get to Austin, we'll talk about that when you see the scenery here in the ATX. And Mack is a wise man. and Sally as well. Very wise. But yeah, but the point of the story is to show you that Mac was making it a family affair. I was talking to Sally on the phone. He was making it about my mom. My mom actually had a relationship with Sally too. And when Mac Brown sat on my mama's couch and drank her sweet tea, and he had a great closing line with me when he was exiting the garage. And as he was exiting my garage, he had brought Bull Reese with him. He had Everett Withers, who was the DB coach at the time. Tim Brewster was recruiting me, the mercenary Tim Brewster, who is on Dion's staff now. If you're a coach getting your start and you want a mercenary recruiter who's the Ric Flair of recruiting, as I called him, Tim Brewster's your guy. He's the one that got BY. He's the one that got Chris Sims. He's a beast. Aggies know that. Florida State knows that. Longhorns know that. Dion knows that too. But anyway, I digress. They all came, and then Mac, as he's leaving the crib, he turns around. I remember the moment too, man. Stood out in my mind. He turns around. He says, "I can't win a national title without you. I can't win it without you, Rod. I need you." And he boom, turns around and leaves. Tells me he can't win the national title without me. That's the line. That's all I needed to hear. That boom, that was pretty much when I made my mind up. It's like, okay, he's thinking like I'm thinking. First of all, he knows how crucial I am. And then second, hey, man, I got to win that national title. So that's when I made up my mind. But since we're talking recruiting, shout out. And by the way, Alan, you're right. Shout out to the BMDs, big money donors and boosters. All right. Because I talked to some boosters and donors. They're pretty big. And, they all had the same. They weren't, I don't know if they were, behind the scenes, if they were trying to align their message, but they all had pretty much the same goal, which was they wanted the University of Texas to be the leader in the NIL arms race. All right. That Texas had that capability, that Texas had that kind of donor and booster support. And in the city of Austin, with all the amazing companies and the Fortune 500 companies that are moving here and the pop culture mecca that Austin has become, there's no reason that Texas shouldn't be the leader there. And Open Doors, which studies all the different transactions in the NIL world, they claim that Texas is the leader in NIL compensation in college football right now. Now, I'm sure it may change every day, but Texas should always be at the forefront. They should be the NIL capital of major college sports. That's what the University of Texas should be. At Austin, by the way, because the Austin part helps. But in my recruitment, shout out to R.C. Slocum, who told you he's the reason I stayed in Texas. I narrowed my choices down to Florida State. I was going to hang out there with Bobby Bowden. All right. Joe Paterno, Penn State, was also one of my final five. I know. I don't even like to admit it. My dad claims, maybe I put it out of memory. My dad claims that I talked to Jerry Sandusky on multiple occasions. I don't believe that. I don't remember that. All right. I don't remember talking to Jerry Sandusky. He claims that I like Jerry Sandusky. Maybe I did. I don't know. I don't think I did. All right. I like Joe Paterno. That's why they was in my top five. All right. So whatever. Boom. That was also top five. A&M, Texas, and Colorado. Yeah, if Dion was the head coach at Colorado when I was coming out there, hey, Robbie might not be at Texas. All right, because I was a big Dion fan. That's why I wanted to go to Florida State. Then R.C. Slocum, he narrowed my choices down for me. R.C. Slocum said, hey, do your parents go to your games? And I was like, Mom and Dad go to all the games. They're going to go to all the games as many as they can when I'm in college. He was like, well, if you want your parents to go to as many games as you can, then you need to stay in the state of Texas. Hadn't thought about that as a 17-year-old. And that's when I took Florida State off the list, took Colorado off the list, still took the trips, but took them off the list. All right. And no Penn State either, between Texas and Texas A&M. And I think RC didn't tell me to go to A&M. He just said stay in the state. He probably should have adjusted and said go to A&M. But I don't know if he feared a young brash Mac Brown at the time. You know what I mean? I don't know if he feared that, but he should have, because Mac was closing. ABC, always be closing. Mac was about it. Oh, hey. So hey, appreciate y'all coming through the chat. So that's kind of my recruiting story. And then, of course, it came down to Mac, and then the rest is, say, history. But getting back to the Colin Simmons recruitment, I'll say this about him, because I've watched, some highlights. I'd like to watch an entire game. Highlights, it's hard to judge, but he's obviously spectacular. He's an elite player, no question about it. But I'd like to watch the entire game. It tells you a lot more than just watching highlights. But I will say this: he's a natural pass rusher. There's some aspects of football. I think of probably any sport, but football is what I know and what we're talking about. Where I think some guys are just they have an innate sense about whatever that is, whatever that skill is. They kind of naturally understand it, whether it be the ability to cover someone man to man. I think some guys kind of get that naturally, the mechanics of it, how it works, the body language of playing man to man. I think I was one of those guys. I kind of understood it naturally. Some guys, it takes work in the technique and the foundation and the fundamentals. But for me, it was kind of natural. I think pass rushing is also like that. I think ball hawking is like that. Some guys are natural ball hawks. They see the game differently. Ball hawks, when the ball's in the air as a defender, they genuinely believe they have a right to it. I played with Nasty Nathan Vasher. He genuinely believed when the ball left the quarterback's hands, that's mine. I got a right to it. As where the ball left the quarterback's hands, I was defending a wide receiver. When the ball left the quarterback's hands, he believes that he was the receiver. And technically, within the rules, you do have as much of a right to the ball as the offensive player. Most guys just don't naturally see the football world that way. But some guys like Neo in the Matrix, they get it. And Jackson Jeffcoat was one of the best natural pass rushers that I can remember at Texas. Just watching. He was a natural. It was like natural. You can tell some guys it's more focused and emphasizing technique. Some guys, they use different traits within their skill set to help them rush the passer, whether it be their strength or their speed or their ball get off there. But in terms of the overall repertoire of pass rushing, man, he was nice. He just kind of really got the natural leverage of it, how to stay low, the BGO. And I think watching Colin Simmons, he does seem to have that natural ability. All right, that natural ability as a pass rusher. That's what Texas needs, one of those guys. In terms of him and his, the projections for him and how highly rated he is, I mean, it's been a while since Texas had a defensive edge prospect rated that high. I played with one, Corey Redden, who was the number one defensive outside linebacker in the country. Ended up playing defensive tackle in the league, but when he came to Texas, he was running down on kickoffs like a monster. 6'4", whatever, he might be 6'4", 230 when he got to Texas, was running down on kickoffs. Ended up playing D tackle in the league because he kind of just kept growing. He wasn't done by the time he got to Texas. If some of the projections are right, then, and he wasn't, and by the way, C-Red wasn't a natural pass rusher. He wasn't. He was just a natural physical presence on the edge. He was a disruptor. But some guys, in terms of rushing a passer, that's different. Not everybody does that really well. Texas right now don't have one. They got some good players. Do they have a natural pass rusher on the roster right now? It's hard for anybody to say, yeah, they have one of those guys. So I think for him, that's kind of the one thing that stood out watching him, that he does, whether it be his ability to redirect, his length, his pursuit angles, which are really, really elite. He's one of those guys. And once again, Sark proving that he's going to conquer the DFW area. I'll give him a ton of credit for it. I've given you guys the numbers. They are phenomenal. And we'll talk a little bit more about this because we'll go to break and Geoff Ketchum is going to come on with us. And then we'll talk about some other things. And yes, we could get into some practice reports too and about how Malik is doing. Actually, that Jalen Ford report that I'm going to get into actually is Malik related, which I like. But here's the number, and it's like I said, I went back and researched it again, and it's still accurate. That if you just take the DFW area that Texas has been recruiting heavily in the last 3 recruiting cycles, I believe I counted 29 players, whether you're talking about the transfer portal or if you're talking about just recruiting class, you had damn near 30 players from the DFW area. Now, that is a huge area. It's big. But in the last 3 recruiting cycles, and the reason is because since 2020, all right, you're talking about 4 drafts, 2020, 21, 22, and 23. You're talking about the last 4 NFL drafts, the DFW Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, has had more players drafted into the NFL than every other state except Texas, Florida, California, and Georgia. And it is right now they're separating, even from the Houston area. And I'm a Houston guy. I love Houston. They're separating from Houston a little bit. Not a little bit, actually. They're separating from Houston quite a bit. And Houston will be in the top 10. The Houston area also will probably be in the top 10. Now, I haven't studied the Miami area. I'm going to ask Geoff about that too. But I haven't studied like the Miami, Dade. I'm sure they got those pockets. I'm sure there's some pockets in California like that, a Metroplex somewhere as well. But I'd put DFW against any cities, Metroplex, or any region or area within the country in terms of how fertile they are and how they're producing high caliber NFL prospects at a really, really ridiculous rate. And I don't know if we've seen anything like it. And that's once again proves it. And Sark knows it because he's doing as much recruiting in the DFW area as he can, and not as much in Houston. I guess my criticism would be he should do more recruiting in Houston, but maybe he deems Houston as maybe it's tougher there because more of an SEC presence, and maybe in DFW, you don't have to worry about as much of an SEC presence. I'm sure it's there, of course, but that's phenomenal. You got to give Sark a lot of credit. He sees where the talent is, and nobody in Texas can compete with that area. But still, those are the two pockets between Houston and between DFW and Dallas and Houston. That accounts for, in the last through four drafts, so since 2020, it's accounting for probably 70% of all the draftable talent in the state of Texas. And by the way, here in Central Texas, also starting to blow up. Yeah. Fort Bend and Houston. You're right. I mean, Terry, that's it. H-Town and Fort Bend. Like I said, that's 70% of all the drafted players in the state since 2020 have come from just those two areas. And yeah, and Sark's doing a great job in DFW. I guess my criticism will be do a better job in H-Town, but hell, man, he's making up for it by cleaning up in DFW. All right, so let's come back. We'll come back. We'll talk recruiting a little bit with my man Geoff Ketchum. We'll get into it, talk some Colin Simmons, some of these questions I just asked about the talent in the state. We'll get into some of that, talk about why Colin Simmons made the commitment to Texas over LSU, and getting to the move to the SEC. Could Texas have made this type of splash commitment, a linchpin recruit like Colin Simmons, if they didn't have now the SEC label with the Texas brand? We'll get into all of that and more. All right, so we'll talk about that. Coming right back. Come join us. We'll take just a quick break right here on the Rodcast in 3, 2, 1.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look at maybe the best thing Charlie Strong ever produced for the Texas football program. What is that, you ask? Identifying Sam Ehlinger as the quarterback of choice for the 2017 recruiting class and then landing his commitment. For those who might not remember, Ehlinger finished as the nation's number 115th overall prospect in the 2017 Rivals recruiting rankings, the 17th best player in the state of Texas, and the number 5 dual threat quarterback in the country. While Rivals eventually came around on Ehlinger, I'm going to pat myself on the back a little bit for ranking Ehlinger as a top 10 prospect in the state and the number 1 quarterback in Texas before he ever received a scholarship offer. SMU was technically the first school to offer Ehlinger, but it's important to note that right after the Mustangs came after him with an offer, Houston head coach Tom Herman followed. Not long after Herman offered, Ehlinger received his first Power 5 offer from Charlie Strong and the Texas Longhorns, an offer Texas fans had been anticipating since a terrific display by Ehlinger at the Texas Elite Quarterback Academy in mid-June. According to Ehlinger, Texas OC Sean Watson told him that they weren't going to offer any other quarterbacks in the 2017 recruiting class. Quote, "They're not going to offer anybody else," end quote, Ehlinger said. 9 days later, the lifelong Texas Longhorn fan, you might have heard about that over the years that followed, committed to the Longhorns. Quote, "Been a Longhorn since day one. I'm truly blessed to say that I'm committed to the University of Texas," Ehlinger announced on Twitter. There wasn't a lot to Ehlinger's recruitment for the better part of the next 16 months as he finished his junior season, competed at the Elite 11 finals going into his senior year, and then went on to begin his senior season in 2016 at Westlake without any distractions. Yet a thumb injury ended his senior season prematurely at Westlake, and it coincided with a horrible 5-7 year for the Longhorns that ended with Strong's dismissal. Suddenly, there was some doubt about his future for a day or two. Almost as soon as Tom Herman was announced as the Texas head coach, he met with Ehlinger to ensure that the player he first offered nearly a year and a half earlier, and before Texas ever offered, knew that he was at the center of all of his plans while on the 40 acres. Following that meeting, Ehlinger locked back into his commitment, and the rest is Longhorns history. Ehlinger was the best part of a 2017 recruiting class that Ehlinger often joked was nicknamed the shit-stain class because of the small reputation it had upon its arrival. It ended up being a class that produced 4 NFL players: Ehlinger, Sam Cosmi, Taquan Graham, and Josh Thompson.
All right, welcome back to the Rodcast. Got a very, very special guest with us, and I'm happy that he made the time because he's a hardworking man. He just did a show on Orangebloods Live, and he's joining us right now. Geoff Ketchum, what's going on, Jeff? How you doing, brother?
I'm the second hardest working man on this picture.
Hey, that's all right, man. I'm trying to put in the work, but I'm having a lot of fun, man, on this platform because the people, they've been fantastic. So I appreciate you letting me be a part of it.
It was funny, Rod. Yesterday, I wasn't sure whether we were going to do what we're going to do now, either yesterday or today. And I got off from doing the 4-hour show that we did. And I was like, man, I'm tired. I've done 6 hours of broadcasting today. That's just like, wait a minute. Rod's coming up right now, and he's going to have me beaten like 60 minutes. Damn it. Right. I can't complain.
7 hours every day. I do want to start bragging about, I don't know if anybody has done as much talk radio every day in the city of Austin as your boy gets to do. All right. So that's basically what we do. We're doing sports talk, baby, all the time.
I call you the Ryan Seacrest of Austin, the Austin airwaves. The man just never stops working from the moment he wakes up.
Well, I appreciate you joining us, man, because I know you're working hard as well. What's up to my man CB joining us now as well on the Rodcast? Okay, let's get right to it because the Colin Simmons commitment has the Longhorn community all abuzz. Everybody is excited about it. Went down yesterday. You guys had great coverage of it. Let me ask you this, because I've been trying to think about it, and I keep bringing up Corey Redding. When was the last time Texas had a defensive edge prospect of this ilk?
Well, they got Jackson Jeffcoat in 2010, but he was more of a strong side guy. He's more of a power player. He was kind of a chip off the old block. So I don't consider him really an edge player the way that I look at Colin Simmons. Okay. Eddie Jones is the guy that I go back to in 2006. But even Eddie, while a bit of a tweener himself at kind of 6'3", 240, he was a little bit bigger than Colin Simmons. I honestly don't know. I don't know. And he's not Corey Redding. Okay. Corey was
huge.
Corey Redding played defensive tackle in the NFL.
Exactly.
So, and Sergio Kendall also kind of a different beast. The guy that is the most obvious comparison is a guy like Von Miller when you look at the body type. If you see the picture that I posted of him from the ceremony yesterday where he's wearing the UT pinstripe baseball jersey.
Yeah.
He's not a massive guy, but man, he's a blur coming off the edge. And it really is hard to pinpoint on a Texas roster in the last 3 decades. I don't know that there's a like for like comparison. I find myself trending back to a guy like maybe Brian Arakpo. It's hard to imagine. It's hard to remember when Brian Arakpo graduated, he was so huge. But when he arrived, he was like 220, 225. So maybe Rack.
Oh, really? From Houston Lamar, baby. Shout out to DV High. He came in pretty skinny though. He did. Pretty small. Is Colin Simmons a little thicker, or is he still pretty slim in your opinion coming out?
I think he's slim.
He's long and rangy. Yeah.
Yeah. I think if you're eyeballing Colin Simmons, you're not ranking him as a 5-star. But Blake mentions here in the chat, he's got this analytics tweet that I found in May where Colin Simmons is in the top 1% out of almost 4,500 plus football players at the edge position that this service has measured in the last 14 years. He's in the top 1% in terms of get off speed off the line of scrimmage. And I hate to throw around the name like Micah Parsons, but he is that kind of a player. And if he hits, that would be the kind of comparison that we're talking about. A guy that I think in the pros, Colin Simmons is an outside 3-4 linebacker. He's not a 4-3 defensive end. And I think sometimes we think about these positions too much through the prism of the 4-3.
Agreed.
And I don't know. I think he's a guy that you move around. I think he's a guy that can play all over the place. And I think he's a guy that gives defenses incredibly huge headaches for how quick, fast, and explosive he is. What he does with his body will be fascinating from here, because obviously when we talk about a Rakpo or we talking about a Micah Parsons, the ability to develop their bodies for the next level while keeping that explosiveness, that's the rub. That's the trick. A rare number of guys actually pull that off. Colin Simmons is a guy that you project to do it, but it's not easy.
Yeah, Micah Parsons actually this offseason, that was one of the headlines. The storylines was he was going to gain some weight, but he wanted to keep his explosivity, if you will, as a pass rusher, because he wanted to play on the line a little bit more on the edge. But getting back to it, that's interesting what you brought up about Micah Parsons. I've ranted even on here, the Rodcast, and on any platform that Rod gets a chance to get on. I always rant about Dan Quinn's defense because I love Dan Quinn's defense. I think it is my favorite defense in the NFL. But the principles that the Dan Quinn defense are built upon, it's built upon positionless football. He loves the hybrids. He loves the flex guys, the guys he can move around the chessboard. And what you're saying is that Colin Simmons needs to be one of those guys, potentially, a positionless football player on defense.
I mean, that's it. And, his versatility is going to be the key at the next level. And I think PK is going to have a lot of fun with Colin Simmons, because he's not a guy that you're necessarily going to line up in a 5-tech and be like, beat this guy with power and beat this guy inside out. I think we know what Colin Simmons is. He's a guy coming off the edge. If he develops the type of, versatility where he can beat a guy inside out, that'll be awesome. But when you watch him right now, what he is obvious. I mean, there's not a lot of tricks with Colin Simmons. He lines up on the outside and he gets places really fast, and teams have a really hard time matching up with it. And I can't stress enough, Rod, the thing that I love about Colin Simmons the most, you can watch the film and see that at times he's spectacular. I love the fact that this kid in the biggest games plays the biggest brand of football. That I've seen guys that I think are his peers from a get-off standpoint, from a quickness, from a speed standpoint. I haven't seen many guys like him who show up in state championship games in the fourth quarter and then just decide, you're not going to be able to block me anymore. I'm going to win this game. And that's what you're recruiting, as a guy that in the fourth quarter, when the game is on the line, is going to make the play. And that's what this dude's all about.
Yeah, no, yes. You talk about big. It's crazy. I did a rant yesterday. Got into a discussion with some of the guys on the chat about havoc plays and Texas havoc rate as a defense. And last season, they actually led the Big 12 in havoc rate. In 2021, they were 8th in the Big 12 in havoc rate. So just splash plays by the defense. And they need more players like Jalen Ford or Ja'Day Barron. DeMarvion Overshawn was one of those guys too, to make splash plays. That's what a guy like Colin Simmons is. He's a guy that's going to make impact plays, tackles for loss, force negative plays. He's one of those guys going to literally wreak havoc on the offense. Texas doesn't have enough of those guys. That's what they're hoping, that some, guys like Barron Sorrell can step up and be one of those guys this year. So obviously this is down the line, but I see exactly what you're saying about Colin Simmons too. Let me ask you this about the recruitment. Is he a linchpin guy? Are we going to see now this, just a storm, and we're going to see just a kind of windfall of recruiting now after him as a linchpin recruit in this 2024 class?
Not in this in the spirit of the way you're asking the question, because I think that Texas there's an offensive lineman out of California named Brandon Baker that I think, if you ask me today, I think Texas is going to get. I think they're going to get Waco Conley, defensive back, Kobe Black. I think it won't stop there. They will continue to, they're in on Dominic McKinley, a defensive lineman out of Louisiana. They're certainly among the favorites there. They were already going to get Kobe Black, and I think they're already going to get Brandon Baker. But if you didn't get, so the commitment, I don't think suddenly means that a bunch of guys are going to start committing that weren't already on pace to commit. Yeah. Had he picked LSU, I think the concern is, if you're Kobe Black, do you turn around and look around and say, there's not one of my homeboys in this recruiting class that's an elite prospect from the state of Texas that's actually picking Texas? I mean, Simmons is the first top 20 in-state prospect to commit to Texas in this recruiting cycle. So they needed to get one on the board. There is, as well as Sarkisian is recruiting, there is a weird little in-state thing going on where, look, even when they get Kobe Black, there's a really good possibility that when this recruiting class is over with, they might only have 2 of the top 20 in the state of Texas. And when it was you who were in, you go back to like the 99 class,
man,
and it's like, oh, well, they signed like 12 of the top 20.
Yep.
But Sark is so good out of, and I can't put my finger on what's up in Texas. It's just they're doing much better out of state than they are in state. But the Simmons thing was imperative, because if they didn't get him, I think there would be a storyline on signing day. Why can't Texas recruit in state? Landing, and look, a year ago, they only got 4 of the top 19, despite having the number 3 rated recruiting class in the country. 4 of the top 19 in the state, but they got 4 5-stars basically. This year, it's not quite at that level.
Yeah.
So it's a statement commitment, but man, it was low key really important in a lot of ways that people aren't even talking about. But I think they might have been talking about if we'd gotten to December and January and suddenly people look up from 30,000 feet and go, why isn't Texas doing better in state? I think this helps make that not a thing, even if it is kind of a weird little thing.
Yeah, even speaking of the state, we've been talking about the DFW area and how fertile that metroplex has become recently, and I've been keeping up with it. Is there any other place in the country, in your opinion, that's producing high-level college football prospects and NFL draftable prospects like the DFW area right now?
I mean, I heard you bring this up earlier, and you said all of the things that immediately came to mind. Dade County. I mean, you're probably talking about South Florida. Per capita, the state of Louisiana is the highest performing state.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that necessarily means New Orleans. I mean, and that would be a city that I would put into that category, but I wouldn't rank it above Dallas. But obviously, if we take the state of Louisiana as a whole, you can't really, there's no doubting the talent that state produces. Atlanta is probably underrated.
Atlanta's probably in there now too. Yeah.
I mean, it ain't an accident that Georgia just keeps on winning.
Yep.
Those are the ones that come, California, I usually think about specific programs more than I think about areas. So you're thinking about Mater Day and John Bosco, but I don't think of LA quite like that. So, and you wouldn't say that about San Diego or any of the other cities in California. So yeah, I mean, there's only a handful, and I think you've outlined them. Yeah.
Yeah, and Houston, like I said, Houston's also in that conversation. They're just not where DFW is right now. That's the best football in Texas, I'll admit, is being played DFW. You're talking about athletes or high school championship caliber football. It's all there in DFW, man. They've kind of taken over that, monopolized it.
Part of the problem is Houston Lamar is not what Houston Lamar used to be. Like the city of Houston, you would used to say, well, you got North Shore and you still have North Shore, but you would say, God, you know that 3 or 5 big time guys are going to come out of Lamar every year. Yates. I saw Alfio Randall, Alfio VC.
Yeah, shout out.
Formerly.
Yeah, he came on the chat, not too long ago. It's my dog.
He might be in here right now. He's constantly in the videos. You know, when you were playing, you knew that Yates was going to have
a couple,
like 3, 4, 5 big time guys every year. And now you look at the Metroplex and you've got DeSoto and you've got Duncanville and you've got Allen, and they just have, I think they've got more powerhouse programs that are consistently producing elite players in ways that other than North Shore, you don't quite see in the Houston area, but these things run in cycles.
Yeah.
And it used to be like every other, when Herman took over the Texas job, all of the talent was in Houston. And there was actually a knock on Herman that you guys aren't doing real well in Dallas. You've kind of conceded.
I remember that. Yeah.
And here we are now, and and Dallas is having a run in the cycle, and Texas is doing really good in the Metroplex. It's interesting that it just wasn't that long ago, a couple of years, where it was like, you can't trust that if Texas goes into the Dallas area that they're going to get a guy or that they'll even be a finalist for a guy. And obviously, you know, it's an area that Sarkisian has emphasized, and, you know, Jeff Banks does a great job in that area. And and generally speaking, one of the weird things about this season is that I think Texas's evaluations are slightly different than some of the National Recruiting Service evaluations. I don't know that Texas would look at my recruiting rankings and necessarily agree with the list. So one of the fascinating things that we'll see in this year's recruiting class, we'll find out from an evaluation standpoint, these guys aren't working on a recruiting list. They're doing their own evaluations, and sometimes that means going outside the box and taking guys that other people, well, why did you take that guy instead of this guy? Texas would tell you, our list looks different than everybody else's lists. Only in 3 or 4 years. Well, you know, I've seen that work both ways. I've seen Tom Herman say that about Jahdae Barron and Jalen Ford, and look at them now.
Yep, no doubt.
And I've seen Charlie Strong tell me that, and you're like, Charlie, all your guys are gone. Like, it didn't work out. What happened? So it's one of the things we're waiting to see from this staff is just what level of developing they reach with the talent that they're working with. It should be better than 8-5. It should be better than 9-3. It's up to the coaches to get it to that level. But on paper, these guys have worked at elite programs. They've developed guys at Alabama. They've developed guys at Notre Dame. These guys have Kwiatkowski's had so much success at Washington. It should happen here. There really are no excuses at this point.
What's the one thing, if you could pick one aspect, or hell, even one player, if you want to improve, like immensely, exponentially?
Quinn.
Is it? That's it. If Quinn reaches his ceiling, you think that's all it takes for this team to
nothing? It's the Oklahoma factor, Rod. Oklahoma won 5 Big 12, 6 Big 12 championships in a row, and they were never great on defense. But if your offense, certainly in the Big 12, is at an elite level and your quarterback play is sublime, you're going to win a lot of games. And I don't need to know anything else about this Texas team, because I can remember all the shows I've done over the last decade where I've talked about the Sooners, and it's like, yeah, but they got a first-round draft pick at quarterback. And those guys, they are the tides that lift all boats. And if you tell me right now that Quinn Ewers throws for 4,000 plus yards this year, I don't need to know anything else at all. Texas will win the Big 12 championship if he's that guy. So, yeah, maybe the better question is, what's my second deal? Because for me, it's Quinn 1, Quinn 2, Quinn 3, Quinn 4, and Quinn 5.
Okay. No, I'm with you. I loved what I heard from him yesterday at the media availability. I don't know if you got a chance to check out sign yet. He talked about playing chess with the defense. And when he was asked about, to expand upon that, he said sometimes setting the right protection. We'll talk about this a little bit later on too. Setting the right protection is just as good as throwing a touchdown. And I thought to myself, that's maturity. That's a mature quarterback saying something like that. That's the coach. I know that's Sark too, a little bit of Sark. Like, no, man, the protection. That's the first and foremost thing you got to emphasize and prioritize. That gives the spectacular, all right, whatever it may be, that gives it a chance to happen if we take care of the details first and foremost. That's probably my favorite part about what he talked about yesterday.
Well, and Rod, think about the contrast of that versus it. Pretty much 365 days ago, a year ago, if I was calling people, hey, how did practice go today? Hey, who's looking good? What are you hearing? People were saying ugly things about Quinn. They were saying that he didn't care. They were saying that he wasn't working hard enough. It was like Johnny Manziel without the crime. It was like, we don't know if he's studying hard enough. He didn't take his playbook to Mexico. There were people, and I bring this up because it's so clearly untrue now. People were questioning his intelligence. And now, 12 months later, he's completely transformed, I think, the way everybody thinks about him. Nobody's saying that junk anymore. He's got his head in the playbook. It's not like Johnny Manziel. You're not going to go to the coaching staff and say, how much has he been on his iPad? And they're like 0.0.
Zero.
You don't get the answer that he gives in that press conference if you're not working really hard at the mental side of the game. And 12 months ago, there were people who didn't know if he was going to get there. 12 months later, it feels like he is. And I think it's the single biggest reason for optimism. The thing we don't know about Quinn yet. What the hell happens when the pressure's in his face? Does his mechanics get sloppy? Does he stand up and make those throws, the tough throws? I think in 9 out of 12 games this year, he's going to breeze. In those 3 toughest games, is he going to be a guy who's turning into a man who's ready for the NFL? Mm-hmm. Or are we going to look at him and go, he may go to the NFL, but that dude needs a little bit more because that part of the game isn't quite there yet. There have been some of the best quarterbacks in the history of the sport that didn't turn the light switch on in year 1.5 or year 2. Like, Chris didn't do it. It took Chris 4 years. And when Chris got to 2002, he was lighting people up.
He looked like an NFL quarterback.
It took Vince 2.5 years. And really, 2.5 years into his career, people were still asking whether or not Texas was going to move him to wide receiver. And then the light switch goes off, and then he's never the same guy again. Colt McCoy, 18 turnovers, whatever it was, as a sophomore. There were a lot of people that had doubts. And it was in year 3 that Colt in 2008 turns into the Colt McCoy that gets a statue and like his number retired. I don't know what to fully expect from Quinn. He's, I think, going to eventually get there, but the process is demanding he get there faster than the best quarterbacks that you and I have ever seen at this school. It's not easy. And that's what's being asked of him.
But don't you think with the current, just kind of the current environment and the structure of college football now, that process happens quicker? That is an expedited process. It did used to take a long time, I think, back in the early 2000s. But now it seems like with the system set up the way they are, the offense is Sark's offense. Because listen, Greg Davis's offense, I don't know how quarterback friendly it was. Sark's offense is pretty quarterback friendly.
Yes.
And we talked about all the weapons that he has around him now. I don't know, for some reason, and you're right, I don't know if it's fair, but it does feel like it's supposed to be a quicker process for Quinn Ewers. And I think they're for all quarterbacks because they play sooner now. They didn't play as freshmen back then either. Now you throw a freshman out there and you really don't care if he's good enough, he's old enough.
It's my PTSD, Rod. You and I have watched too many Texas seasons where I freely admit I'm naturally skeptical now in ways that, in 2010, I just thought Garrett Gilbert was going to be an instant Heisman candidate without any regard whatsoever for the amount of time it takes a guy to develop. Texas quarterbacks were just badass. Now it's been so long since it's truly been that way. And I was one of those guys that was never completely sold on Sam for all of the great things that Sam was really good at. I never thought he was a great player. I thought he was great at a lot of things. He certainly was tough. And, you looked at his numbers and they're some of the best in the history of the school. But from week to week, I never knew what I was getting from Sam. You knew that 2 or 3 times a year, Sam was going to have an absolute clunker, a sub 100 quarterback efficiency rating that is beneath the level that he should be playing at. It's what I don't know about Quinn. Like I said, I think he's going to be bang out an absolute star in 9 out of 12 games. There are 3 games that I don't even know which 3 they're going to be that I think he really gets tested in, and I don't have an answer, but I can't wait to find out. Alabama's one of them, though. If they go in and they find a way to perform at a high level in that game, Rod, anything becomes possible, certainly.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, though. You're right about the ceiling of Quinn Ewers, and I think the hope would be that Quinn's in the conversation for, Big 12 Offensive Player of the Year and for that type of recognition late in the season. If he is, that means Texas is probably a team that's playing in the Big 12 title game. All right, Jeff, I know you've been working hard, brother. I won't keep you that much longer. So,
hey, Rod, can I make one more quick point?
Go ahead, please do.
The thing about my issues with Quinn is that they're the 2 issues, my biggest issues with Quinn I've had since high school. One, he's never been a good deep ball thrower. I mean, and I tell the story about Troy Aikman all the time. When he came to the Cowboys, he struggled with the deep ball. He was a number 1 pick in the draft, and it took he and Ace Wright never hooked up. Like, it just never happened. And then eventually he figured it out, right? So I have hope that eventually happens, but you can go back to high school and the same issues that he struggled with a year ago with Xavier Worthy, you could see them in high school. And then the other thing is, it didn't happen a lot in high school, but he played from such a clean pocket and rarely was stressed with traffic, with bodies around him. Not necessarily even just getting beat up. Like, you'd watch him throw the football and everything was just so clean and easy and no one was near him. But if you got some guys around his legs, if you got pressure in his face, his mechanics would suddenly go haywire. Suddenly he's throwing the ball off his back foot and getting himself into trouble. Those are the 2 things even going into this season. Again, it's like, we know that he's worked on his mechanics. What happens when it's 65 miles an hour on the freeway? It's different than driving in the neighborhood. And yeah. If it happens, Rod, he's a Heisman finalist. If he can answer those 2 things. If he doesn't, and it's still kind of a struggle bus there, I don't know. It's one of the reasons why I'm 9-3 with this team, because I don't know how to answer those 2 questions that I've had since he was a junior in high school.
No, it's a great point, because I've talked about, I want to see his second reaction plays, his off-schedule plays. It's not going to happen a lot because Sark's offense is meant to operate on schedule, and it's meant to operate on time. And when it doesn't, it really does kind of throw things off. But that's when you need your quarterback to improvise and be able to make a play. And that's going to be Quinn's instinctive, kind of response to whatever that situation is. And I think that's kind of where you're getting at. And that, by the way, that's probably 50% of football. Where something happens, a missed block or a bad route, timing, rerouted, whatever it may be, and you have to make a play within the structure of the offense because you know it that well. I'm with you. I think it will happen a few times. I don't know what games. I mean, maybe K-State could be that team. That 3-high defense, as I've talked about, that is something that Sark's offense has struggled with. So my bet will be one of those 3-high defensive teams, maybe TCU on the road. It'll be one of those teams potentially.
How do you, as a defensive guy, if you're playing against a team that scares the crap out of you from a skill position standpoint, but your thought is the way to disrupt this is to get in the quarterback's face.
Head of the snake. Yeah.
How, with the skill talent they have, how willing do you think coaches on the schedule are going to take the risk to say, Mitchell, nobody's getting double coverage. We can't afford to do it. Guys, you got to lock up man-to-man, and we're going to try to create some pressure. But, boy, if we don't get there,
trouble.
We're going to make you look bad potentially.
Yeah.
How do you think defenses instinctively this season will approach Texas? They're so talented. I think they're scary. And if it was me, I think I would lean – if you're too aggressive, you get 70 hung on you. But if you're too conservative, you might get 45 hung on you. And
yeah.
I don't know how you approach that potentially, if you might get boat raced depending on how you either get that right or wrong.
Yeah, no, it's like there's a riddle that goes around the defensive circles. How do you defend more space with fewer defenders? Like, basically, that's what Texas presents to you. Like, basically a mathematical equation you cannot solve. You can't double X-Man, double JT Sanders, and load the box. You're going to have to pick and choose what you do. I think a big part of it is they say in poker, don't play the hand, play the man. You don't have the guys to keep up with Texas. Alabama does.
Yeah.
That's pretty much about it. Alabama does. So honestly, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I'm playing Sark. Truth is, Sark hadn't been great off script. Second half adjustments hadn't been great. We know in the fourth quarter, Texas was outscored last season. I wouldn't play the hand. I'd play the man. I'd go after the scheme itself. I probably would go with simulated pressures up front. I want to create pressure, but I need to confuse blocking schemes, so I'd probably go without a simulated pressure. I definitely wouldn't utilize the 3-high scheme. He wants to run RPO-based passing scheme, or 3-high distorts that pre-snap read for the quarterback. So he may, make a miscalculation every now and then that will help you out. I think you got to play the scheme of Sark's, not the players, because you're going to end up, in my opinion, you're going to end up in, SOL. You'll end up in purgatory trying to decide, all right, who am I going to double team on this play and when am I going to blitz? That takes a lot of brilliant calculation. I would just put together a bunch of different concepts that cause chaos and confusion. So I try to play a ton of bump and run when I can, whether that's bump and run actually man-to-man, or I'm just rerouting wide receivers and dropping back into a zone, more of a, whatever it's matchup quarters, whatever it may be. I'm running lots of twists and stunts up front, tons of them, and simulated pressure, not blitzes, simulated pressure where it's just 4 guys coming, but you never know where they're coming from. I'm lining up in ghost fronts. A lot of times, the amoeba fronts, so the offensive line don't know. And Quinn Ewers, he has to set the protection, but he may not know. He may not know exactly where the pressure is coming from, so he can't set it correctly. And I got to run a 3-high because I need those safeties malleable, moving around. You play the scheme, not the team.
I love that, Rod. I'm going to remember that all season.
Chaos and confusion, dog. That's the best way to go up against Sark. That's why the 3-high kind of works against it too. And if you go back and look, a lot of twists and stunts up front works pretty well. The DBs, I think that's, if you don't have at least one good cover guy, then you got no shot.
You're just going to lose.
One cover guy you trust. Yeah, you got to have one guy you trust, and then you can allocate resources elsewhere. And based on where you put him, you're like, man, I trust you. Can you just hold up in this coverage? We'll give you some time. We'll give you some help deep, but we need you to hold up. I think you got to have somebody you can trust. But, I mean, you're right, though. Pretty much this offense should be one of the most prolific offenses in all of college football. If it's not, that's probably going to fall on Sark more so than the talent, because that would mean the quarterback is underachieving and regressing, and Sark has not really adapted and evolved his play calling.
I love that. I'm so glad I asked that question. You educated me with an answer that I will take with me every game this season. When I watch how teams attack, I'm going to wait to see which teams are doing the thing that you just described. And then I'm going to be like, okay, how does Texas do against that thing? Because Rod made it sound like the way to go.
I made it sound like, but a lot of coaches feel like that's how you get a job. You make me sound confident when you saying all that stuff. They be like, man, that guy really knows what he's talking about. But the truth is, that's just what I've observed that may actually, help some team get some advantage against Sark. But what we know about Sark is get him out. You survive the script. If you can survive the script, you got a chance. If you're not down 21 points by the time that script is over, you got a shot. Because Sark struggles with this chess match that takes place with those 3 quarters after the script, 2.5 quarters after the script is done. So that would be my best advice. Like, dude, whatever you do, you got to survive that script. You cannot be down double digits after he's done with the script. If you can be within 1 score after that script is done, those first 20 plays, then you already got the advantage on Sark, pretty much.
You sound like a guy who's the best number 21 in the history of Texas football. You do. You sound like you could claim that.
Hey, the second best is probably coaching on the 40 acres. So give that up. My man Blake Gideon. There you go. Shout out.
I thought about that, but you're probably right.
I mean, right? Are we talking about Grady Captain? Who's the second best 21 of all time?
I don't know.
Exactly.
I know who the first is.
Damn right. You don't even need to know about the second. So we're gonna say it's Blake Gideon. That's my dog. Hey Geoff, man, thank you for the time, brother. I had so much fun, man. We gotta do this again.
Anytime, any place, Rod. I'm always here. It's been too long. If I don't talk to you later today or whatever, have a great weekend, my man. Tell your wife I said hello. I will be in Austin soon, and I have to take you guys out to dinner.
I'm down, man. You name the place. I'm down. I'm already in.
You guys name the place. Let me treat you guys.
I know, but wifey's pregnant, so I'm not gonna guarantee she's gonna be there because she got other stuff happening. But I will show up.
We can take her a to-go bag.
Yes, definitely. Oh no, I definitely got to feed her. If I don't feed her, it's gonna be a whole other issue.
All right, Rod. Have a great weekend, my man.
All right, thanks, Geoff. All right, we'll take a break, guys. We'll come right back, and we'll. Thanks for hey, Robert. Thank you for the love. We appreciate that. All right, we'll come right back. We'll answer some of your super chat questions. We'll answer some of your questions on the chat, and we'll dive into some of the other topics. I want to talk defense. We'll talk about why Jalen Ford could be taking his game to another level. I got a little snippet, a little clue that he may be taking his game to another level. We'll dive into it. All that more on the Rodcast coming up next. Don't go anywhere. Taking a break in 3, 2, 1.
This Orangebloods recruiting flashback takes a look back at the single lowest rated recruit of the 2020 recruiting class and one of the 5 lowest rated position players that the Longhorns have signed in the last 5 recruiting cycles. That's right, I'm talking about senior All-American linebacker Jalen Ford, a lowly 3-star prospect who ranked as the number 127th ranked player in the state of Texas per Rivals. Yeesh. Ford's recruitment began in earnest in the spring of 2019 when he picked up 16 offers by the end of May, including Power 5 offers from the likes of Kansas, Minnesota, Utah, and Texas Tech. Still, the recruiting services paid him no attention. After taking unofficial visits to Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Hawaii, Ford took his first official visit to Texas Tech in late May. Quote, "This is my only official visit for the summer," Ford said at the time. "I'm looking to visit Washington State and Utah early in the season, so maybe I'll be ready around September, then make a decision and announce my commitment shortly after that." True to his word, the trip to Utah proved to be a game changer for Ford as he committed to the Utes on October 8th of his senior season, right after taking his official visit to see the Utes. Very quietly, though, the Longhorns became involved in his recruitment a month later. After Texas assistant coach Tim Beck visited Ford at his high school, Tom Herman called him a week later to offer a scholarship. Ford did a good job of keeping the news of Texas's interest under wraps. In fact, in early December, Ford told Orangebloods that he hadn't even been talking to the Texas staff. At the time, Lone Star was alive in the Texas State playoffs, and Ford said he wanted to remain focused on his team's playoff run. Once Lone Star season came to an end on December 14th, Ford began to focus on his upcoming decision, and he finalized the decision to commit to Texas a week later. "It was really right before I was going to sign," Ford said. "At that point, football is over. I finally had some time to sit down and think. The day I didn't sign, the first day of signing day, I had to call Utah and Texas. It was a little bit chaotic." On December 23rd of 2019, Ford committed to the Longhorns, and the rest is Texas football history.
All right, welcome back, folks, and I appreciate that. Was that Triplet Joseph says number 21s can't catch. hey, at one point Jay Witt was 21. Troll Mary was 21. Some of the receivers to hit that 21 before. So yeah, I don't know what to tell you. That's angle. Listen, the ones that I dropped, they weren't in big games. Like I dropped picks in North Carolina, versus Baylor, versus Kansas in the big games, Oklahoma, Big 12 title game. Boy, I caught the ones that mattered. Oklahoma State, actually. We almost lost Oklahoma State my senior year. Whew, I'm telling you, that would have changed everything. That was stressful. And your boy caught kind of with the game-winning interception. Boom. Yeah, that Gideon drop. That was bad. But listen, y'all, if y'all gonna blame a DB, blame Earl Thomas. And who was that? Was that Curtis Brown? I don't want to hate on Curtis Brown. What CB let me know, because I always keep me on it. But yeah, listen, Muschamp had a double team. That Crabtree double team. That was the call. 2 NFL DBs down there, and one of the greatest, Hall of Famer in Earl Thomas. Y'all need to make that play. But everybody's mad at Blake Gideon. Now, Blake Gideon, it is Curtis Brown. I know. Blake Gideon has started more games than any other DB in DBU history, y'all. So get off my boy, man. Get off of. All right, so let's talk about Jalen Ford for a second. Because he said something that really reminded me of my days at Texas. So he was talking about, and I'll read the quote. I wrote it down. He was talking about him and Malik Murphy. Because Earl Thomas said he heard a whistle. Yeah, I know. He probably did. Them Tech fans are crazy. All right, they wild. I told a story yesterday about my experience at Texas Tech and me losing 0-2. So I really can't say nothing about 08 crew, because I lost in 0-2 when we were supposed to be going to a BCS game. And all we had to do was beat Cliff Kingsbury and Wes Welker, and we lost that game. So, hey, I apologize. That was on your boy. We did have injuries, though, but excuses are like, y'all know what, and everybody's got them, so we don't get into that. But Nathan Basher, Derek Johnson, my boy Kalen Thornton, Marcus Tubbs. Come on, man. We had great players that went down in that game. We still should have won that damn game, though. But I digress. Let's get back to Jalen Ford. Someone said they were already in field goal range prior to the Crabtree catch. Might have been. I don't remember all the details, but I remember how it was tough. That was heartbreaking. So Jalen Ford, he was meeting with the media. And he said something interesting, because he was talking about his locker mate, which is Malik Murphy. And he was saying, hey, I'm the middle linebacker, Malik Murphy's the quarterback. And he was basically saying oftentimes they will just talk ball, like exchanging ideas and exchanging pretty much cues and offensive and defensive concepts. And he also brought up the fact that him and Malik and Quinn Ewers at times, that they'll pick each other's brains about what's going on and, what you saw on this play, why the quarterback decided to make this audible or to shift this player. And he was talking about kind of the whys, and Sark talks about this, the whys of things happening. And this can be really, really helpful in terms of increasing and helping your football IQ. And it's interesting because these conversations he's saying he having with the opposing, with the quarterback, all right, with Malik Murphy, I had those conversations too. I had them with my boy Kyle Shanahan, who's now the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, and I had him with Chris Sims. I remember those sessions. They were like little think tank sessions where they would just divulge all of the different habits, the tendencies, what the offense is looking for in the defenders, what are the tells of different defenders, and I really, for me personally, I wouldn't be able to do this today without those think tank sessions. And it really helped me become a better overall football player because it increased my football IQ. And it helped me really learn, the true education of the game, like become a student of the game. And that's what I said about Jalen Ford, that he's actually becoming a student of the game. You're talking about a guy that should have been Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year last year, right? He had one of the greatest seasons in the history of Texas football for any defender. He became the third Longhorn to be tabbed Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year 3 times in a season, along with Jackson, Jeff Coat, and Derek Johnson. He had 10-plus tackles for 6 different times, and he forced a turnover in 6 straight games. Only player in Big 12 since 2000 to put up at least 100 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles in a season. And he's the only Power 5 player with 4 interceptions and 3 forced fumbles. Only FBS player with 4 interceptions, 3 forced fumbles, and 2 fumble recoveries. And the only FBS linebacker with 4 interceptions. And also, he tied Derek Johnson's record. I mean, he was unbelievable. So he's got natural instincts. But what he's saying now is, and maybe part of that is those think tank kind of sessions with the opposing quarterbacks, learning exactly how the opposing offense views defense and what they're thinking. What's their methodology? What's their process? And the guys who get into that, I'm telling you, they take their game to a whole nother level. It took my game to another level. I wouldn't have been an All-American at Texas without learning those things. What Shano taught me, I'll give you a really quick little rundown. He taught me about the route tree. I knew the route tree. Everybody knows the route tree, right? You know, the hitch, the slant, the skinny post and the post route and the comeback. They're all on the route tree. They're all numbered, and every different system has maybe a slightly altered numbers, but they're all pretty much the same numbers. But as just talking to him as a wide receiver and him giving me all the different kind of tricks of the trade for wide receiver, I learned what I called route elimination. And as a DB, having to learn, okay, as the receiver progresses down the field after their release, they are essentially eliminating routes as they get down the field. So you shouldn't be defending all the routes all the time, right? Once he gets past 5 yards, he can only run so many routes. Once he gets past 7 yards, so many routes. Once he gets past 10 yards, you're eliminating all those routes. And that's when you should be learning, okay, all right, now I can think about turning my hips soon, or maybe I can think about turning my hips late, because they love to run the comeback, maybe, which is the last route on the route tree before your deep routes, your post, your 9 route, and your post corner. But once you get past a certain depth at wide receiver, all routes are limited. Now in the NFL, they do some funky stuff. In the NFL, they got option routes and choice routes, and they purposefully give you misinformation as a defensive back. They'll run a stop comeback where they run a double move. They'll run a hitch and go, and then turn the hitch and go into a comeback route. They're doing all types of crazy stuff. But for the most part, all right, you can eliminate routes on that route tree. Once they get past, once that receiver gets past about 12 yards, 12 to 15 yards, everything else is deep. Turn and let's get ready to go. And so you're going to learn kind of route elimination. I learned in the NFL, I learned from my man Dre Bly that you got to become a football investigator. There are all these different clues that are given you that the offense are giving you. So you got to take them. You're thin slicing, taking little slivers of data and information. And then you're going to put the puzzle pieces together you're going to project what they're going to be based on that data and information you get. Down, distance, formation, personnel package, field position, the player matchups, the tendencies, your film study, the scouting reports you got. You're putting it all together, and you're doing it in about 30 seconds. That's your pre-snap read. And if you can do it well enough, be a football investigator, a true detective. Shout out to Matthew McConaughey. Y'all should watch that. It's a great series. At least the first season is a great series. But if you can put all that together, then you become a football investigator. You can narrow down the ways an offense is going to attack you. Then you'll know, well, they're only going to run 3 or 4 concepts out of this formation, this down and distance with this personnel package. And it's likely with this player being matched up against this defender or whatever with this set that they're going to run double slant 70% of the time. I'm jumping the slant. 70% chance they're going to do it. I'm jumping it. And so you just narrow it down. So you're never defending the entire route tree. You're never defending every possible play. You got great technique and fundamentals. That's your safety net in case you're wrong. If you practice proper technique and fundamentals, then at least you'll be in a good position that when you're wrong, you'll still be able, to be, in a position where you won't get burned or beat. But playing football, you're playing with this. You're playing with this. And Jalen Ford's playing with this. That's why he's making all those plays. And I love that little snippet that he's saying, no, I'm talking to the quarterbacks after practice. All right, why did you decide to motion, jet motion on that play? And why did you check to that audible on this play? What did I do when I moved and when I faked the blitz? You decided to make that check. Why did you make that check? There's a great story about DeMeco Ryans actually doing the same thing at the NFL level. I'm a Texans fan, so I know about this stuff. But how about this? I'll read this little excerpt to you. It's from Matt Schaub because he was on the team with the Texans when DeMeco Ryans was the linebacker. He says, the piece says, more than that, Ryans didn't just want to know the role of every player on the defense. He wanted to know how the offense worked too. Another former Texans quarterback, Matt Schaub, remembers being hounded by young DeMeco Ryans for clues into what the offense was trying to achieve. Matt Schaub said, quote, in the locker room, in the meal room, on the field, on the side, when our reps are over, hey, I saw this formation. Is this something we should look for off of that? Like a play action or something. He was always trying and wanted to visualize because defense looks at things from offensive formations. He went on to say basically he was obsessed with trying to learn the offensive side of the ball, which is why now DeMeco Ryans is the head coach. And I said, I remember these same sessions with my boy Shano and with my boy Sims. You know what I mean? Whether we're just hanging out at somebody's apartment or hanging out in the dorm room, or whether it was right after practice in the locker room, having these little think tank sessions about how to solve problems within the game. And I always say coaches are just problem solvers. They're just, problems, whether it be off the field or on the field, you're just trying to solve problems as a coach. And as a player, you want to be able to solve some of those problems on your own. Once you know the construct of the system and you know it well. Remember at one point, I remember Tom Herman told me, Sam Ehlinger knows my system better than me. He told me that. He said, Sam Ehlinger knows my pro spread system better than I do. He's telling me things in practice about my system. He's coming to me saying, Coach, man, I'm telling you, I got a better idea. I think we can do this. I think we can streamline this thing and make it a little bit more efficient, make it a little bit more effective. That's what you want. That's when your football knowledge is going to a different level, right? That shocked me. When Tom Herman told me that, I was like, what? He's like, no, Sam, he knows the system better than I do. I can't tell him anything about the system he don't already know. He's telling me stuff like, Coach, this is clunky. This doesn't make sense. You need to change your system. So Tom Herman essentially changed some of his system because of the requests right of Sam Ehlinger because he knew it so well. That's legit. They appreciate you, just a dude. Oh man, I love talking. This to me, I'm telling you guys, Jalen Ford, these types of little nuggets to me tell me he might end up being a better player next season than he was this season. Now, I don't know if he's gonna get the interceptions. I don't know if he's gonna fill up the stat sheet. But in terms of him as a player, because he's playing with this, there's a reason I played with Dre Bly. I watched Dre Bly cover Randy Moss. Dre Bly probably ran 4.5, had love handles, had kind of a little dad bod working by the time I got to Detroit Lions. And I would watch this man cover Randy Moss, one of the greatest athletes in the history of the world, one of the fastest players on the planet, cover him on post routes and cover him on 6 routes. And think to myself, how is this possible? Well, because football, you can play it here because Dre Blizz, who's coaching the Detroit Lions right now, actually back up there, ironically, he understood route combinations. He would look at he would talk to me about triangulation. Yeah, exactly. He'd be like, all right. He said, but what I'm doing is I'm looking at the quarterback, but I got my periphery on the number 1 receiver, and I'm triangulating from quarterback to the number 2. And he talked about how he would actually kind of that's how his vision. He wanted to triangulate and be able to see all of them when he was playing a zone coverage on the field side. Oh man, I'm telling you, some of this stuff got deep. And he's the one that taught me about, kind of the route combinations, so many route combinations from so many different formations. And he was big on knowing route progressions based on formations and person. He was brilliant at it. He essentially started predicting route combinations and being like, yeah, they're gonna run a 6 route and a post combination out of this. They're gonna run. You're gonna see. Oh man, at this point, we're gonna see them run. They're they're gonna run a double slant out of this, double post right out of this. I mean, he was really good at it, and maybe that was innate, but I think he was just a student of the game. And the reason he could run with a Randy Moss, even though physically the 4.2 and the 4.5 some was off there, it's because he understood angles and leverage, and when to flip his hips and when to turn and run, and he really was brilliant. And that, to me, that separates these great players on the 40 acres from guys who could end up, even at the NFL level, becoming really good players, because it's the mental part of the game. Everybody's great in the NFL physically, and it's full of freaks. They're all X-Men in the league. Everybody's a physical freak. My freakish skill, wasn't something that was separate in the league, and not many do. Some do. Some are, even in the league, they're still elite athletes, even at that level compared to everybody else. But for the most part, man, guys are separating with this. Dre Bly was Mac Brown's guy. Dre Bly told me that he wanted me to, basically said, you reminded me of Dre Bly. That's what Mac Brown told me. He said, I remind him of Dre Bly in terms of my contract. So I told Blizz that when I met him, I said, man, Mac Brown said, I remind you of him. And then he was like, oh, really? And then we talked about my hands, and Dre Bly was like, nah, man, I got great hands, which he did. Dre Bly had amazing hands. So not that great. The triangulate thing reminds me of how Lincoln Riley said he wanted his routes to get open in order of a quarterback's progression. Yeah, that actually, that's a Bill Walsh thing. Bill Walsh is always talking about everything working. They talk about the triangle offense. Essentially, Bill Walsh's offense, there is a triangulation like aspect to it, where the routes, that the early part of his Bill Walsh offense, that it would also be triangulated in terms of the route concepts and route progressions with the quarterback. You can read deep detail about it. That's way too football nerdy for me. But yeah, from Blizz's point of view, defensively, he was just talking about getting a triangulation view of all the receivers and the quarterback in the picture, and maybe see it on. Instead of, some guys have to literally take their head from quarterback, take it back to number one, and then go to number two. You count outside in, you count from the sideline in. So in terms of your reads, because everybody's got a read, you're reading something initially at the snap, and then you got reads after that, depending on what the progression is. So say your first read, you're a 3-step reading the quarterback. You read the quarterback for your first 3 steps, and then you snap your head back to number one wide receiver to see what number one is, and then snap your head to number two. And instead of doing that, Dre Bly would just say, nah, man, I'm going to triangulate this thing. I'm going to see it all. And then and react. That's a lot of information to process, but if some guys can do it, some guys can't. That's why you have to learn how to play the game your way, because everybody's skill set's different. Everybody learns differently. Everybody sees the game differently. And that's part of it. That's part of mastering mastering your own skill set and how you play the game. That's the beauty of it. And by the way, Quinn Ewers in the sound, that's what he talked about. To bring it full circle back to Quinn Ewers, he said, I'm starting to enjoy I'll get the quote here. I don't want to misquote him. He said, this is what he said about the chess match, because he brings up the chess match. He said, quote, at quarterback, I feel like I'm playing a more violent, more active chess. Kinda, so trying to beat the defense with certain moves. That's what he's talking about. He's getting into now the mental part of the game. The physical part of the game, yeah, it's fun. Trust me, it's great. But that will deteriorate. And throughout the course of a season, nobody is as fresh as they were game 1 as they are in game 13. But you should be really crisp here. You should be, as your football IQ by game 13 should be through the roof, which will make up for any physical lacking if you got some dings or you're a little injured. That's why football speed is a real thing, because football speed is just here. It's just guys who process the game faster. It's guys who understand angles a little bit better. Guys who don't have wasted movement in their footwork. That's all football speed is. It's an amalgamation of efficiency in a lot of other areas, mentally and physically. And then, turns out that guy who runs a 4.5 can play on the same field with a guy that runs a 4.2. You damn right, because the guy that runs a 4.2, he don't think as quickly as the guy that runs a 4.5. Guys that runs a 4.5 seeing the game faster. So, boom, he makes up for whatever he lacks because he processed quicker, and then he was able to make a quicker decision. So essentially now Quinn Ewers, that's why I love that he's bringing it up. And now maybe Sark is also talking about the chess match within the game, which you guys know, listen to me. I oftentimes will make the remark about the chess match within the game. And now I'm hearing the starting quarterback talk about the chess match and that he's enjoying the chess match. Yeah, that's, to me, that's beautiful. That's fantastic. Yeah, Jerry Rice, you damn right. Oh, one day we're going to get into my 40-yard dash conversation because I got some great numbers. And then there's Jerry Rice. And there's Jerry Rice. And then there's the guys, who Dion ran a 4.2 is great. But hell, Dion had trouble covering Jerry Rice. He ran a 4.6, 4.5. Because Jerry Rice understood how to run a route. And the art of route running is creating separation. And Jerry could separate. I covered Jerry Rice. Proud to say I covered Jerry Rice. Now, in aging, old Jerry Rice. Now, he had the receding hairline. Yeah, they had the braids. He was trying to keep hope alive. But the hairline disagreed. But he was an old Jerry with the Denver Broncos. Most people don't forgot he played for the Denver Broncos. Old Jerry Rice, and he still could run a hell of a 6 route. And I got a chance to cover him because I'm low down on the depth chart. And Jerry Rice at that time, he wasn't the top guy. So every now and then you get to go against Jerry Rice because in the league, sometimes those guys they're avoiding reps. I'm like, man, I'm trying to get out there and cover Jerry Rice enthusiastically. So I can brag that I have covered Jerry Rice a few times in my career. It was at practice, but I covered the GOAT. All right. I made a couple of plays too, but I ain't gonna lie. Old ass Jerry made some plays up right there too. I don't know how old Jerry was. He had to be close to 40-something out there, just out there getting it. I don't know. He's probably running like a 4.7 out there getting it. So yeah, no doubt. Jerry is definitely one of the examples of that. I actually ain't gonna lie. I stalked Jerry a few times. Jerry used to love to stay in the steam room a long time. So just to have some alone time with the GOAT. Yep. I've stalked him in the steam room. I just wanted to have a conversation with Jerry Rice. And the only way I could have it was for both of us to be naked in the steam room. So that's where I talked to Jerry Rice for the first time. So yeah, you know what? And I ain't ashamed of it. I'll tell the world that. Ain't no shame in that. Hell, I tell my kids, oh yeah, man, me and Jerry chopped it up one time about ball. I wasn't gonna miss that opportunity. I got cut a lot in the league. I know it was only probably a matter of time before the Denver Broncos ended up cutting me, and I wouldn't have had a chance ever in my life to talk to Jerry Rice. So the only way I can talk to Jerry Rice is I gotta get naked and stalk him into a steam room. Well, we're gonna do that then. All right. And y'all can talk bad on me if you want to. Thank you, John. I'm not ashamed. I appreciate that. But anyway, the football IQ, guys, I'm telling you, that's what I'm excited about with this team. Like that. And we talked about this with Jalen Ford yesterday. And now we're talking about it with Quinn Ewers. We might as well continue to talk the Quinn Ewers part of it. These are both quotes from Quinn Ewers, because I just read you the quote about him saying he's enjoying the chess match, the chess match within the game. And he says also that he said, quote, I don't think as much about who does this guy and what this guy does. It just automatically clicks. He was just talking about how comfortable he's in offense. And then he says, which is huge for my position, so I can focus more on fronts and keeping myself protected. I want to slow clap that. Beautiful. Ain't that great? Man said, hey, I'm more comfortable now. I'm worried about setting protections, right? And now I can work on getting the offensive line right in the right protection. That's basically what he said. And this is my favorite quote from him. All right. And this is a great quote from Quinn Ewers. Shows me a lot of maturity. And he's talking about the chess match. Shout out to, I believe it's Jeff Jones, who asked him another question about to expound upon the chess match thing. And Quinn Ewers said this, and once again, I got giddy because I'm thinking about the mental part of the game and how these guys now are challenging themselves to be chess masters, all right, in the chess match within the game. Listen to this. This is what Quinn Ewers said. He said, it's a chess match against the whole defense, whether it's safeties rallying down and I have to check the protection, or it's linebackers doing whatever. You got to make it fun, It's a kid's game. And he said, when he asked him, like, hey, so give me an example of a chess match that happened at practice. And Quinn Ewers said, quote, we were in a tight end set. He was attached. And, I saw a double outside pressure. And I checked the protection and was able to get a quick completion. Sometimes, this is the best part of it, guys. Best part of the quote. Sometimes checking a protection is almost better than throwing a touchdown pass. Sometimes. Wow. What it tells me, I think this is something we can expand upon. This is a big, big statement from Quinn. I'm going to psychoanalyze it. All right, like Blackman Freud. He's basically saying, it just shows you, he's saying, no, man, sometimes getting that protection perfect, the right protection, and picking up every, blitzer, every rusher that's coming, it means that I won the chess match. And not only did I win the chess match, but I took care of the most important and basic, fundamental part of my job. And now the easy part is the completion. That's the easy part for him. He's got the golden arm. That's the easy part. And for him now to say that getting in the right protection is just as satisfying as a touchdown pass, it shows you that he is valuing, this is maturity, because we all been through it. He is valuing the title of Rod's autobiography, Naked in the Steam Room with the GOAT. hey, man, that's what it was. And I'm not ashamed. I brag about it. I'm gonna brag about that. And yes, we talk about Quinn Wick now, Chris. Yeah, no doubt, CB. We talk about Quinn Wick, man. And I think this is gonna be part of it. That mentally, he is as sharp as any weapon that Quinn Wick would have. Like, this is a weapon for him. But it shows you, even going back to the haircut too, this is part of it. He's valuing substance over style, right? Like, even in his quote there about the satisfaction of the right protection. Right protection ain't sexy, but it's necessary. That's substance, all right? The touchdown pass, that's style. That's pretty. That's going to make the highlight reel. That ain't really what he's worried about right now, is making the highlight reel. What he's worried about is getting in the right protection. Is he worried about the flashy mullet that he had? Nope. Not worried about the flashy mullet. What I'm worried about, all right, cut that off. What I'm worried, he said it's hot outside, all right? It's just practicality. It's just pragmatism that he's dealing with now. And I think he's becoming a substance over style, just individual, period. JT Sanders talked about how he's a different man now, a better leader, all these things. I think he's a better leader, different man, because he's valuing substance over style. To hell with the haircut. I did the NIL thing. I'm sure he's still making good NIL money. All right. And even in the way he sees the game now, I think he's going to value more substance over style. And substance over style means footwork and mechanics over the flashy off-platform throw. When there's a easy completion to be made, instead of doing the off-platform flashy sidearm throw, which we know you can do it. Just because you can do it don't mean you should do it. Set your feet, all right? Use proper mechanics and get in the habit of doing the right thing. How you do anything is how you do everything, right? Just get in the habit of doing the right thing. And I think for Quinn, sometimes because he could do those flashy throws and just throw off platform, and he's got the golden arm that can make any throw. And that is correct. There's throws I've seen him make that are just still stand out to me. And I can describe them to you, and they stand out to you. Remember the out route? He was on the far side of the field, far hash throws on the other sideline, a deep comeback route, an out route to X-Man in the Bama game, and everybody went. It left everybody mouth open like, what? You're not supposed to, as a DB, I can tell you right now, when I watch film on Quinn Ewers, I'd be as a DB already aggravated. And here's why. Because I got to defend every throw on the field. There are some quarterbacks that are limited in their skill set. They don't have the golden arm. So when he is on the far hash and I'm the corner defending the opposite field there when I'm on the field side, I don't usually think about defending a comeback to the opposite sideline. Because I'm thinking to myself, the quarterback had to be out of his damn mind to make that throw. And that's what Bama guys were thinking. They hadn't seen Quinn Ewers. They're thinking, man, I ain't got to defend. Once I turn my hips, I'm turning my hips to go to defend that 9 route or that post route. I don't have to worry about defending no deep comeback or out route, a deep out to the far sideline from the opposite hash. Who does that? He can throw that. So as a DB, you automatically watch the film and go, damn, I got to defend every route. I got to defend every area of the field. Even when usually I am on the far side, I think to myself, I don't have to defend really the sideline on the far side because most quarterbacks can't make that throw. And if they do, they're going to be late. No, you can get it there. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Well, I see a pick 6 coming. I'm like, oh, you think going to make that throw far sideline? You know how long that ball's going to take to get over there? Oh, man. I'm going to take that to the house. House call. Now with him, that ball was moving. I guarantee you. Yeah, sometimes you'll be on the football field with a quarterback his arm is so strong, you can hear the ball coming. You can hear it hissing. That's how Sims was like that. Sims' ball was sometimes it was thrown with so much velocity, thrown with such a strong arm that it would hiss as it came to you. It would hiss. He separated a dude's shoulder in like a like a camp when he was coming out of New Jersey in high school. Separated a dude's shoulder, and I definitely see it. Quarterbacks, man, sometimes that's why touch is underrated. Touch is a little underrated. But for Quinn, the substance over the style, right? We know you can make all those throws. We get all that. What I need to see is the footwork. What I need to see is the mechanics, proper mechanics, and trying to be habitual and intentional and deliberate about your footwork and about, the process, the mental process, being able to have a accurate pre-snap read and diagnose post-snap if it matches up what you saw pre-snap. If not, being able to process really quickly, know where your outlets are, know where the fail-safes within the offense are built. And I think for Quinn, what I'm hearing he has missight. I'm just hearing it now, though. We got to see it. And even what Geoff talked about, you got to see it. I got to see it consistently. Some said seeing the blitz when the quarterback misses it, you can adjust to it. It's awful. No. See, and Brett Favre was like that too. I'm not saying you can't make it to the NFL and be, undisciplined, but why chance it? And if you're Quinn Ewers, at this point, you're not. I mean, we know he's got an elite upside, but you're not proven enough to go out there and be undisciplined in a lot of your fundamentals. So I think this offseason, footwork and mechanics, I'm sure he worked on that. And as a quarterback, honestly, you got to work on that constantly. That's got to be part of it. And you don't want to see that, as Geoff talked about, you don't want to see that regress or deteriorate in the big games when he's under pressure. And that's one thing, too, I want to see from Quinn. My big thing from Quinn this year is second reaction plays and off-schedule plays. I need to see him become a better second reaction off-schedule athlete. Now, Sark's offense, you're not going to operate off-schedule very often because Sark doesn't even like that. He wants his offense to operate on time. But that's the nature of football. Ish happens, right? And when it happens, when the fit hits the shan, you need a quarterback that can make a play, that can make something out of nothing. Sam Ehlinger had that ability to make something out of nothing. And I think Quinn has it too. That's why I think Quinn getting lighter. He says he's 200 pounds now. He was 218 pounds at the bowl game. Said he felt big and kind of not lethargic, but he felt that weight. He felt heavy. And now he feels light. And he should scramble a little bit more every now and then. Right? We should scramble a little bit more. And there's no doubt at the end of the season, we saw a tremendous improvement from Quinn Ewers. All right. You saw a tremendous improvement. Yeah, I can curse on here, CB, but I'm so trained and programmed not to curse when I'm just on mic. So I've been doing it now for 16 years, and I just try not to do it. Because once I get in the habit of doing it, then I'm going to do it on radio. I know I am. I'll just get these two worlds confused, and I'll do it on radio. Then you'll hear Rod B getting canceled and fired because he dropped some F-bomb and forgot where he was. And so basically when I'm on mic, I've just decided there are other ways to do it. So I say Fuster Cluck. I can say when the fit hits the shan. I can say for Gits and Shiggles. There are other ways for me to do it. I've gotten around it. But I will say for Quinn Ewers, and we'll talk about this when we come back. So there's one more quote I want to get to about the deep ball. And Geoff talked about it too. He was never a great deep ball thrower, and he's not going to be a great deep ball thrower, which is strange because in Sark's offense, he loves the deep ball. Loves the deep ball. All right. Loves the deep ball. Yeah, Craig Way did teach me, man. Craig Way always said you can say anything you want to. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. And yeah, so how I say it is so I won't get canceled or fired. All right, so we will talk Quinn Ewers when we come back. One more quote that Quinn talked about, and it's about the deep ball. So we'll talk about the deep ball a little bit and what it means in Sark's offense and why Sark can't give up the deep ball. And we'll hear from Quinn Ewers. We'll read a quote from Quinn Ewers, and we'll talk about what he's learned about his role in being a more effective deep ball throwing team. We'll get into all of that. And get ready to wrap it up. We got just one more segment left in the Rodcast. So get it in. Any questions you got, any requests, hit me up on the chat, and we'll try to address it. All right, we'll come right back. Taking a break in 3, 2, 1.
One of our very first Orangebloods recruiting flashbacks will focus on a player that went on to become one of the best running backs in the history of the sport. Jamal Charles was a high 4-star prospect by Rivals.com when he signed with the Longhorns in 2005, finishing number 57 overall in the Rivals 100 and number 4 overall in the state of Texas. Personally, I had Jamal Charles as a 5-star prospect on my Lone Star Recruiting Top 100 list, but I have to admit that I wasn't head over heels in love with him the first time I watched his junior film as a prospect. It's hard for me to admit this out loud, but I actually had questions about his speed and whether he was really as fast as his track exploits suggested he was. Ultimately, he was scoring touchdowns as a junior at Memorial by such wide margins that he really never had to open up his speed on the field as much as he just seemed to coast. It didn't take me long to figure out that questioning his speed was one of the dumbest things I've ever done while working in this industry, and that's probably saying something. The most dramatic part of his recruitment might have come on the day he decided to commit to the Longhorns, because when he picked up the phone to call running backs coach Mike Haywood, no one was there to take the call. Charles told Jason Sukumel of Orangebloods.com that he would call Mac Brown back the next day and make it official. And that's exactly what he did. The hit rate for the class was exceptional, as Charles was joined by the likes of Henry Melton, Roy Miller, Jermichael Finley, Roderick Muckleroy, Quan Cosby, Chris Hall, Charlie Tanner, and of course, Colt McCoy. When it's all said and done, and you look back at the last quarter century of Rivals.com ranking prospects, Jamal Charles is one of the greatest Longhorn prospects that ever lived.
Shout out to my man Jamal Charles, actually up for the Hall of Fame, the 2024 class. So let's hope somebody makes a great case for Jamal Charles. On the chat here, someone on the chat, Doran wanted to know, Rod, were the refs so biased against UT when you were there? Darwin, Mac Brown used to always say coaches coach, players play, and officials officiate, so you can't really worry about that. I'll admit last year the stat that opposing offensive lines were only called for, I believe it was 2 holding calls against Texas. That's no. That does make you think. I'm not gonna go full conspiracy theory. That makes you think. And then Oklahoma, I believe their number was 3. If I'm not mistaken. I believe Oklahoma and Texas combined only had 5 holding calls that were called against opposing offensive lines that they played. So, yeah. Like I said, I'm not saying that means that that's proof positive that there's bias officiating, but I'm sure that Longhorn fans can make a case. It's always kind of been like that, though. And Longhorn fans, I'm sure, feel like, and I'm sure other fan bases feel like the Longhorns have actually gotten preferential treatment at times. It is what it is. I will say K-State, they had 14 holding calls that I counted. 14 of them, they were called against opposing offensive lines. So 3 times as many as Oklahoma and Texas combined, damn near. All right, that's enough about that. So let's get to some discussion about the deep ball for Texas, because it was addressed in the last media availability for Quinn Ewers. He was asked about the deep ball. If I'm not mistaken, I think it was the N-word that asked him about the deep ball. He said, quote, on deep passes, I think I've learned not to try to be perfect. Just give our guys a chance, because with all the athletes we have at receiver, if you give them a chance, 8 to 10, 7 out of 10 times, they're going to come down with it. Just give them a chance. It doesn't have to be the perfect ball every time. That's really what I was trying to focus on. Appreciate that, John. Sorry you're not getting no work done either at the job, and I appreciate you joining us on the Rodcast. Okay, the deep ball. Listen, Sark's already said it. Deep ball ain't going nowhere, right? The deep ball will continue to be a critical part of Sark's offense, and he loves to throw the deep ball. He loves to throw it early. I have my stats here tell me that Sark on first down, he has thrown the deep ball. 48% of his deep balls basically have been on first down. So he throws it early. All right, he wants to set a tone. And essentially, what I can gather, psychoanalyzing Anwar. Oh, sorry, Anwar. I apologize. All right. I won't mispronounce it. Don't tell Anwar that I mispronounced his name. I apologize about that. For sure. I know that. So thank you for letting me know about that, Oscar. But the deep ball for Sark, I believe for him, it's all about psychological damage to inflict on the defense. He wants the defense to operate from a fear-based from a fear-based mentality. And what I mean by that is they're worried about giving up the deep ball, so they're playing less aggressive. They're playing on their heels, and they're building their offense, or at least start building their defense, or calling their defense to prevent the deep ball, therefore making them vulnerable elsewhere on the field, especially in the intermediate and some of the short game. And if you don't defend the deep ball and you want to bring your guys up to stop the run in the box, stack the box, or you want to, defend the intermediate, have flat-footed reads like Oklahoma State often does, then boom, they're going to throw it over the top, which explains why against Oklahoma State, didn't start trying to throw it deep a lot, kept throwing it deep, and to the point where he kind of threw Texas out of the game. 14 overthrows, the most in the last 10 years. Then we found out later on, quarterback had a messed up hand, then receiver had a messed up hand. Yeah, you had a one-hand man throwing to a one-hand man. That's probably not the best coaching strategy, right? But I think the strategy was built in part, or at least it was a game plan created in part because the Oklahoma State defense, they flat-foot read a lot of things. They love to flat-foot read stuff. And that's why Sark wanted to make them pay for all those flat-foot reads he saw on film. So he's like, you know what, we're going deep, man, because they like to sit on routes. That's why I believe Oklahoma State's the best third down defense in the Big 12, because they sit on routes. You can get them, but they basically are relying on percentages and odds. The odds of you completing a deep ball are really, really low because it is a low percentage throw. The chances of you completing that underneath route, that short to intermediate route, are much higher. So they bank on, we'll rally to the short, intermediate, quick game. All right, but we're going to sit on these intermediate routes and give ourselves a jump on it. You want to go deep? We may be somewhat beat. You may have a little separation, but our technique is good enough and our safeties are good enough where we can rally back to position. Right, we'll use our kind of catch-up speed. So anyway, that's why I think Sark, my football theory, the hypothesis, why he just went crazy with the deep ball versus Oklahoma State, because the game plan told him they're sitting on routes. But the deep ball for Texas, they completed 27% of their deep passes last season. 27%. That's really low. That's in the Big 12. You're talking about you're the 7th best team in the Big 12. Yeah, in terms of throwing the deep ball. Oh, sorry. Yes, that's bad. Yeah, only West Virginia was worse, and Oklahoma State was worse. So I take that back. You're the 8th worst team throwing the deep ball in the Big 12. So you had 2 teams that were worse than you. And for Sark, I think one of the big issues is I think he throws it too early in downs, because I just talked about 50% of his deep balls are thrown on first down. And in the scripts, oftentimes, and I'm going to go back and look at it, his script is the first 20 plays. I would bet a large percentage of his, maybe disproportionate percentage of his deep balls are also in that opening script. Because he wants to test out the defense a little bit early too. So if I was Sark, I would start with the quick game and start with the underneath, and then kind of work my way to the intermediate, and work my way to the deep ball. Sark didn't like to do that. Sark doesn't like foreplay. I'm talking about football foreplay, where he starts with something a little easier, starts a little slower with the short game, the quick game, and intermediate, then get to the deep ball. Sark wants to throw the deep ball right away. He wants to get right to it, right? He ain't messing around. He's going deep right now, and you're going to deal with it. And if I was Sark, I would probably take a different approach, because this year you can do that. Why? You have an array of receivers that have a variety of versatile skill sets. You got Jay Witt, you got X-Man, you got JT Sanders, you got AD Mitchell, you got Isaiah Nayor, you got, hell, I ain't talking about guys like Casey Kane. All your receivers have very different skill sets. You don't have a lot of the same type of player. So really, if your running game isn't sufficient, you can let your passing game be an extension of your running game and work it that way. I think at times he's trying to throw the deep ball with Quinn, and even Geoff just talked about, he doesn't think Quinn Ewers was a natural deep thrower. Just naturally, he's not really good at it. That's not a strength of his skill set. And I think early on, when you try to do it without him being in rhythm, without him being confident, I do think it affects not only his psyche, but in his confidence. But I think it does set the team back. It sets the offense back. You're behind the chains a lot. And Seven says Sark needs to adjust in the second half and control the clock with short passes. The quick game. I've been saying it forever. I think Sark needs to utilize the quick game more and get guys more yards after the catch instead of the deep ball. But he's going to use the deep ball. I just think when he decides to deploy the deep ball, it may help him and be more constructive. But there's no doubts. The biggest issues of facing Sark this year, it ain't the deep ball, but the deep ball has got to get better at it. You can't be that bad at the deep ball. And 2 years ago, 2021 and 2021 with Hudson Card and Casey Thompson, Casey was about 32% completion percentage on the deep ball. Hudson Card was around 23%. So they were still, I think the average is close to 33%. So Casey was close to the average and Hudson Card was well below the average. And as a team, this year, Texas is below the national average. But I will say Hudson Card did improve. Hudson Card was around 34%. So he got better. And the hope is that Quinn Ewers will also get better on his own. Quinn Ewers this year was around 23%. So Quinn Ewers, basically, his deep ball percentage is where Hudson Card's deep ball percentage was in 2021. They're at 23%. Hudson Card improved to 34, damn near 35% in 2022. The hope is that Quinn Ewers takes a similar leap and he gets to 34, 35%. That would be tremendous. If he did take a similar leap to Hudson Card, I think we'd be fine. I think that's like I said, that's close to the average. Right now, you're well below the average. And you don't want to be below the average in the deep ball because I think you're doing more harm than good if that is the case. It's like the three-point shot in basketball, right? You know, I mean, if it's going down, if you're making them, that's great. Then you're getting all the return on that investment. You get all the benefits of that three-point shot. But when it ain't going down, you can shoot yourself right out of the game. And what I recognized about Sark is, and he talked about this, after he's off his script, that's when he struggles as a play caller to have the same creativity and innovation and the same really kind of aggressive mentality that he had with the script. And by the way, the script is easier because he's got a whole week to come up with it. The research is based on game plan, film study. So, and it's a collective effort. All the coaches are contributing to that. So yeah, the script should be good. And by the way, all the players have been practicing it all week long. So they've mastered those plays. They know the steps on every play. They know the hand placement, footwork. They know everything about all those plays. And after that, then we're just going back to the playbook in general. And I think Sark, as a play caller, that's the chess match within the game we talk about. That's when Sark has to become a chess master and be able to win the chess match within the game. Texas was outscored in the fourth quarter last year, but they outscored their opponents by 179 points in quarters 1 through 3. Why? Because by the fourth quarter, everything that you game plan for, all your preparation is pretty much out. Then by the time the fourth quarter rolls around, you are deep into the chess match within the game. When you are matching wits, trying to outwit the opposing coach on the sideline. My coaches against your coaches, my guys against your guys, and it is based on the counters and the adjustments that are being made. That's where Sark struggles. He struggled with that in 2021, and he struggled with that in 2022. So that's going to be the big leap for him, is because I've recognized what Sark's offense is. It's a collection of cheat codes, force multipliers, and they can be formational, schematic, tactical, a lot of different things. It can be empty formation. It could be, pre-snap motion, targets to motion. It could be, and you can bunch sets, condensed sets. You can go to, he throws 2-back sets out there. He loves that. Sark is also a guy that, loves early down pass rate. That can be a concept he uses. And all of these different cheat codes, he just combines them. It's like a gumbo of cheat codes and force multipliers. And what I've recognized is that these cheat codes, the combination of them, the amalgamation, 3-4 in one play, they peak during the script. They peak during the script, the first 20 plays. And then there is a significant reduction in all of those elements. Not all, most. I would say most, right? You're talking about play action pass, RPOs, pre-snap motions and shifts, targets to motion, empty sets, bunched and condensed sets, all these different cheat codes. A lot of them are reduced in the second half. You see fewer and less of those force multipliers and cheat codes. And I think it's because he's off script. And one of my suggestions will be, instead of fewer, instead of less, more. Just make sure you increase all of those concepts instead of decreasing them. Because all of the analysis that I do tells me that you see less of it. And all of my numbers, and I got tons of them, that say all of those concepts that I brought up that gives his offense an advantage, a significant advantage. And the success rates are disproportionately higher, and the first down, touchdown rate significantly higher. All those things I track, a lot of them are decreased in the second half. And I wonder why. Especially when you're losing or your offense, for some reason, has suffered a, kind of a stall or lull in the second half. So that, to me, that's the first reason or first solution I would throw out there to Sark. And I don't know if that's going to fix it, but that's a trend that shouldn't be happening. You can reverse that trend. Another thing is, if the first 20 plays are already scripted, and we just talked about that, you practiced them, everybody knows what they are, players know what they are, so does Kyle Flood and the coaches, and everybody has perfected those plays, and you have no problem executing those plays, as we can see, Longhorn fans, because they're usually immaculate, the best part of the game for Sark offensively. Let somebody else call them. Let somebody else call those plays, since everybody knows what they are and you've already practiced them and you know what they are as a coach. You can veto them if circumstances change or something, unexpected happens. But let somebody else call the plays while you just sit and take notes on what the defense is doing to adjust to your game plan. What all that opposing coach is doing, the little adjustments he's making, the little tweaks he's making, you just, like Mac Brown, with a little notepad, document them and be coming up with your creative counters. So by the time your script is done or the second quarter is deep into it or in the second half, you already have a jump on what the counter is going to be. You know exactly what it is. I know they made this adjustment. They went from this front to this front. They changed this coverage. They're rolling coverage this way, shading it this way. These are the counters that I have ready to go. I think that's another all these are suggestions. I don't know if it's going to fix it. You're a coach. Your job is to solve problems. Solve that problem. That one of the trends is that Texas continues to, in the second half, all right, they continue to regress as an offense. And we do see for Sark, I think we see a different team in the second half. First half. They still haven't played they still are not a 4-quarter team. Totally. Because they were 2-5 in 1-score games last season, and they were outscored in the fourth quarter. So you're playing more and better football than you did in 2021. But if you play 4 quarters of football, now you're talking about championship football. And that's on 4 quarters of coaching and play calling from Sark too. And that's why I think he's got to fix whatever is haunting him and ailing him in the second half of these games. He's got to take his coaching prowess to another level. I think he can. It's in him. There's no question. But there's a reason Sark has a close to 40% win percentage versus coaches who win at least 60% of their games, which is kind of the base mark to get into the College Football Hall of Fame. And when he faces coaches who win fewer than 60% of their games, he has a 75+% winning percentage. Because when he faces a below average coach, or hey, I can beat that guy because he's not a chess master. But when he faces an above average coach, a true chess master, because Sark is around 55% win percentage, so he's up above average, slightly above average. When he faces a good coach, he has trouble matching wits with them, especially when he's off script in the second half. So that would be two of my suggestions. He also could just have, his defensive coach, which I'm sure he does. That's why he's got all these special assistants. They can just reverse engineer your game plans every Thursday or Friday. My boy Shannon used to always say, make the assume, just have a hypothetical thought experiment. Assume that the opposing coach, you should do this probably before every game at one point with all your coaches. Assume that they have a better game plan than you. Just assume. Just have the thought experiment. Let's say, guys, what if they got a better game plan than us? What do we do? What if they had a better game plan? It happens. Sometimes I've been in games with Carl Boris where he had a whole game plan. We practiced all week long. And then in the game after the first series, he did this to the game plan. All right, guys, that's the game plan. And we're done with that. Now we got to make some adjustments. Let's go. Let's coach. Don't run from coaching. That's what it is sometimes. You realize, oh, man, we had a flawed game plan. Or they're, making better adjustments quicker than us, whatever it may be. And Sark has done it a few times. Last year, the game plan he had versus Baylor early on wasn't working. The game plan versus Iowa State early on. And what did he do? Put some Bijan on it with a side of Rojo. Smart move. You don't have those luxuries this year. So he's going to have to give his team a schematic advantage. But he could have his coaches just reverse engineer his game plan, assume the opponent has a great game plan, and then work from there. What would you as a coach do if you found out early in the game they out game planned you and out prepared you, and you need to go win this game on the fly? Conjure up a game plan and create one. Those are the kind of thought experiments I think would be good for Sark. And if he has his coaches reverse engineer his game plan and tell him exactly how they would adjust to his game plan, whether it be PK or Payam Sadat, whatever, and then he can right there on the spot come up with creative counters for each adjustment. And then once you get in the game, you can assume that if these defensive coaches are anything like your defensive coaches, they'll come up with similar adjustments. And then you'll go, okay, I'm ready for that adjustment. I have a counter. I'm ready for this adjustment, A, B, C, or D. There's got to be something Sark can do. These are obviously solutions. I'm just throwing blank at the wall and seeing if it sticks. But that's going to be part of his growth as a coach. I think the D-ball will be something that will be solved. The bigger issues will be, can Sark take his coaching prowess to another level? And that's why some say, I'm pretty sure he had GP doing that last season, and it helped with the third quarter. Yeah, GP is now on the staff right now. So that could be something too to look at. So that's my suggestion for Sark. I hope and I think that Sark will become better at it. I'm not going to say he's going to be a chess master, but I think he will improve that aspect of his coaching. So Deontay says, I assume Sark didn't struggle with adjustments at Bama. Was it a matter of just having more weapons to deploy? Some of that is, yeah. I mean, this year he'll have similar weapons that he had at Bama, or at least some of them. But at Bama, I mean, he had 4 first-round wide receivers, first-round 5-star talent everywhere. He's building up this Texas roster. I don't know if it's where Bama was. So some of it could be that. But I still, even if he gets all the great weapons here at Texas that are similar to Bama, I do want to see Sark win a game for Texas and give them a tactical, schematic, strategic advantage. And I don't know if he's done that. But I think he did it in 2021 with K-State, but I'm not sure about anything else other than that. All right, we got to get out of here because people got stuff to do. I appreciate all you guys and your participation. It's been really fun. Monday, we'll be back, same time, same channel, and we'll be discussing everything from Texas football to Cowboys football, NFL preseason, all of that. So I appreciate you guys. Please have a great weekend. Remember, the Revolution will not be televised. We'll be talking about it right here on the Rodcast. Thank you.